Okay, so today then what we're going to be talking about, it's going to be all about systems development today. We're going to introduce you to Project 6, our last project. It's hard to believe that we're almost there. 4 classes left. Counting this one, 2 more next week, and the following week I'm away on Tuesday, so we'll only have a class on Thursday, and then that's it. So, yeah, month of November goes by quick. So, yeah, only 4 classes remaining, and we have to learn systems development in 1 class, and it's not the only class we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be introducing the project. It's not due until the 29th, so you know, we've got lots of time to work on it, but I did want to get it out to you today, and I just posted it this afternoon so that you could have a look at it and we could talk about how we're going to tackle it at this class, and then we'll be looking at it again in more detail. So looking at systems development, why do business majors or non-business majors need to know about systems development? Well, the short answer to that is because it's all about money. It's all about some big money. And another thing the reason why it's important is because it affects your business processes. It affects the way you do business. And in addition to being very costly, it is a major change. Even if you're fully automated now, new systems development is still going to require change. And we all know that change has to be managed. And the person that's going to manage that change is you. So you need to know as much about it as you can. So we're going to try to accomplish that in this lecture and in the Project 6 that you're going to do. And that's really what you need, is you need an appreciation for it. You need to know, is it bigger than a bread box? Like, what does it look like? What kind of effort is behind it? And after, getting your feet wet in a little bit of programming code, you'll have that appreciation. So the next time you hear about it, it won't be this big unknown black hole that you know nothing about, right? So I mean, when you look at the fundamentals of why we call ourselves a university, is because, it's supposed to promote universality. You're supposed to know, not only your major, but, some other areas too, and that's why you take electives. So I would still recommend that if you are a business major, you look for electives in the area of IT and computer science, and don't let your study of MIS end here. Look at this as a starting point for other courses that you might want to take down the road. Okay, so let's look at this poor fellow here.
I've got some great ideas for a website. We could have a spinning logo or a flaming logo.
You know what would be a great idea? If people with PCs anywhere could order our products, and that was all tied together, inventory, billing, vendors, the works, then that would change everything.
I don't know how to do that.
So basically, the guy that was thought he was doing well.
And that would change everything.
I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to do that, right? He's got no concept of what even that looks like, and he's probably good at what he does, right? But just lost, right? Just has no concept of what it even looks like to be able to tie everything together, where you have accounting and billing and all on one system, and is that like I get back to what is that? Can you describe it? Is that six days work? Is that 6 months work? Is that years away? Sometimes you don't even know that, right? So what we need to somehow get a handle on what this is that's involved in a systems development effort. So that's what we're looking at in this chapter, and we are going to kind of dive into it. I did want to kind of before we get into the chapter material, I did want to kind of talk about Project 6 just briefly, so that you can see what your end result is going to be. So even without opening up the requirements for Project 6, I did want to open up the environment there, and so we can have a look at it. And there it is there. So this little, get down now, get this closed. This little screen that we see in here that I'm moving around, this is your window. And everything that's inside this window is full of controls. And some of these controls are buttons that you click on. Some of these controls are boxes that information is going to show up in these boxes. But that Apple button, the Microsoft button, the Google button, and Clear All button are programmed. So that when the button is pressed, it actually does something. And this is a very simple app, and it could very well be an app on an iPhone or an Android. But with this free version of Live Code, which it is 100% free, so this program that I have, I'll just show you where I launched it from. I downloaded it, and it became an icon on my desktop. Like I need another icon, right? Yeah. It's just called Live Code, and it's a community edition, which means that it's a GPL license. It's open source. It's free. It doesn't cost anything to use it. But if you did want to develop apps for an iPhone or an Android, you do have to buy a student edition for $25. And we don't need to do that, but if you wanted, if you wanted to do yourself up a little app, $25. And it's just that easy. So let's see what it's like to work in this environment. So basically, what I've done here is I've created this little program, and the way I got the buttons on was I went over here to the toolbar, and it's completely movable as well. If you don't like it there, you can move it, wherever you want. But for me, it kind of makes sense to be on the left there. And I just said that I wanted kind of a push button. And I dragged it down here, and then I had to give it a name, because if you don't give it a name, see, it's just called button. So what you do basically is double click on it, and you go into the properties. Its name is button, and the icons and borders, the colors and patterns, the geometry of it, and so on and so forth can all be set in here. And you can go into custom properties. You can give it a name. So we call it, you could call it new button or whatever you want it to call it, and that name would show up on the button. And then if you wanted to put code behind it, you could go up to this little menu item that's the second one in from the left, and you click on it, and it comes up with a window, and this is the code window. So the code window says what happens. Most likely, what's going to happen is somebody's going to click on this button, and this is first and foremost event-driven. If you want to call it event-driven or visual programming, and we'll see in the chapter that they actually call this visual programming, but it's all driven by events. The event being that somebody is going to click on this button. So when you mouse clicking on this button is an event. And so what you would do is you would capture code here. You would write code between this on mouse up and end mouse up. A certain amount of code was needed to make something happen. So let's see what in our application what's going to happen when we click the button. I'll just get rid of that. I'll go here to the Apple button. I already have code behind it, and that's exactly what's going to happen there. So the reason why I picked this language is because it's as close to English as you're ever going to find. This is not a named programming language, but if you had to compare it to what it's most closely looks like, it kind of looks like a Microsoft development tool. It's very close to Visual Basic, which in itself is the basic programming language, and it's very English-like. So when somebody clicks this button, the first statement we see there is local X, and X is the same X that you would have used in an algebra problem. It's a variable. It's a spot where you can hold things in memory. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Yahoo Finance, and that is a HTTP request out to Yahoo Finance. We're going to get some quotes on the Apple stock, and we're going to specifically ask for the symbol, the bid price on Apple shares right now, and the high and the low for the day. And anytime someone presses this button, it goes out to Yahoo Finance, it grabs that information and brings it back and puts it on our screen. Just that easy. But you can read this almost like English, right? It says, put item 1 of line 1 of X into field name ANS. And the name is where the stock symbol goes. Let me just move this window so that we can see what's behind here. So this first empty box is called name answer, right? Name answer. So that box is called name answer. The bid ANS is where the bid price goes in. The high and the low are in the wrong order. They go in, and it doesn't matter what order they're in. They'll go into the respective boxes. And this put does that for us. It puts, first of all, it gets everything from Yahoo Finance, and it puts it in X. So X is going to equal APPL, comma, and let's say the bid is $111.23, and let's say the high for the day was $115.19, and the low for the day might be $110.15. So this whole string is in X. And what it does, it goes through and it says, your item 1, your item 2, your item 3, and your item 4. Now I'm going to put you in this box. Now I'm going to put you in this box. And I'm going to put you in this box. And I'm going to put you down here. And so it fills in the 4 boxes with that information. And the neat thing about this application is it goes and gets the information for you. It goes out to Yahoo Finance, gets the information for you, and populates the boxes. So you don't have to type anything in, you just have to press the button. So this would be a nice little app to have on your phone, right? And you could change the stocks to anything you want, and then you just have a button, and you press the button, and your stock information would come up. So right now I'm in the design mode, so anything I click on kind of comes up with sizing handles on it, so I can make it bigger, right? I can make it smaller. I can move these buttons around. See, I can move this button around anywhere I want. And I'm in the design mode. And the only difference between being in the design mode and the live mode is clicking on this arrow. So at the top of my toolbox over there, I've got two little arrows, one that has the plus sign on it, one that doesn't. When I click on the little arrow that has the not the plus sign on it, I'm now in kind of the live mode. So if I click a button now, it's going to actually do something. So here's the Apple button. It wasn't instant, right? Because it had to do some work. It had to go out to Yahoo Finance. It had to get the stock symbol for Apple. It had to get the bid, the low, and the high. So right now the bid on Apple stock is $112.66. This is as up to date as you can get, right? I can do the same thing with Microsoft. Microsoft's always slower, right? And I can do the same thing with Google. Yeah. So Google come back, no problem. And I have been having a problem with Microsoft. Don't ask me why, but sometimes I have to click this button a couple of times. And there's no logical explanation for it because it has the same code behind it as everything else. But there's all three of them right now. So Microsoft bid, right now you can buy a share of Microsoft for $49.49. You can buy one share of Google for $544.72. Of course, you could bid lower than that, but if they've already got this offer, why would they take yours, right? So yeah, so I just put this little button down here, and what it does, it clears all the boxes so that you can go back and press them again, and they should fill in with new information. There we go. There we go. There we go. So, that could be easily resized. These boxes are probably too big for the numbers that fit in them. You could resize this. You could fit this on a smartphone screen. You could save it forever. So that's what we have to do. So if we go back to the design mode, and I click on this button to bring up the code again, you see this code is reusable. All you have to do is copy this code to the next button and change the Apple symbol to Microsoft, and then change where the information is going, and you got yourself a new button. So let's look at the code for Microsoft, and here it is. You see, the only difference is that I put MSFT instead of APPL in here, and I'm putting the answers in another set of boxes, and they're called almost the same thing, but it's named ANS2 and bid ANS2. And you can be pretty well assured that in the Google column, they all end with a 3. So every box has a different name, and what I'm doing is I'm populating those boxes with numbers. And that's Project 6. So in the instructions in Project 6, if you look, it probably makes a little bit more sense now that you've seen the application running. So if we look at the instructions, without having seen the application run, the instructions are maybe a little bit obscure. But the background is, and this talks a little bit about going out to a website using an API call, an application program interface, kind of plugging your program into a website that's going to send back numbers to your program, and then your program is going to put those numbers in boxes. So that's basically what this background, and you can do this without writing a program. So I have a couple of examples here. So example, if you want to use the API to get a stock quote for Microsoft, let's say you just want the price, then you could throw this into a browser. So if I clicked on it now, what it's going to do is it's going to fire up my browser. It's going to download a CSV file, and that CSV stands for comma separated values. You notice in here, these values are separated by commas. And that's what we call a CSV, comma separated values. Very, very common in data, in the data world, to have CSV files. They're also sometimes called flat files because there's no organization to them, other than the fact that they have a comma between the values. And when I open this, by default, it's going to open up in Excel. So it my Excel wasn't open, so let me just try that again. So if your Excel is open, close down some of that. There's my downloads there. Oh, there we go. Now that my Excel is open, let me click on it again. There we go. The file comes down. I open it, and because Excel is open this time, it'll just ask Excel to handle it. And there it is. So it comes back with $48.78. Because all I asked for was the current bid on Microsoft stock. I just asked for P, and that's what P is. It's the current price of Microsoft stock. So there's some other examples there. That was example one. Example two is you go to Microsoft and you say, I want not just the P value, but I want the N and the P. So it comes back with the name and the price. Let's say you want to bring back two stocks. You want to bring back General Electric and Microsoft. And what it'll bring back is it'll bring back the name and the current bid, and Microsoft and the current bid. And you know, that proves that it is workable to do it without writing a program. And sometimes we can integrate that into a spreadsheet and have a button on our spreadsheet so that when you press the button on the spreadsheet, it just fills in the cells, right, with the values. Or, and that's what page 2 is, we could write a program. So the first thing that we need to do if we're going to write a program is download some type of facility that we can write code in. And so you would download and install Live Code 7. That would take you all of about 5 minutes to do that. Just a software program you download for free. Click I agree and install it. You can install it on Apple. You can install it on Windows. You can install it on Linux. There's various operating systems that it works on. And then what we want to do is call the website that we just called, the Yahoo Finance, and bring back these stock quotes. So what we do is we'd add a button for every stock quote that we'd want to look up. And so Apple is APPL, Google is Google, etc. And this is the exact code that you would put behind the first button. So behind the first button, that's the code that we just saw on the screen a few minutes ago. And it would bring back the relevant information and it would pick off items 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it would put them in the boxes, right, that they belong in, and it all works. So once you have it working for one stock, in this case Apple, and I took a screenshot of what the finished product should look like. Once it works for Apple, you should be able to do it for Microsoft and Google as well. And it will fill in those boxes, right? And just to let you know, there's more information that you can get. So on page 3 here, I listed things I could have asked for. So what I'm asking for at the end of this URL to Google Finance or Yahoo Finance is the S, the B, the G, and the H. The S is the stock symbol, the B is the bid price, G is the low. I don't know why they didn't call it L, but G is the low and H is the high. But look at all the stuff I could have asked for, right? There's the low and the high for the day, and there's the B over there, the S is there. But you could bring back all kinds of stuff. You could bring back how many shares were traded today? What was the volume of shares traded today? And these are letters that stand for, and actually some of them make sense, like V for volume, A5 for ask size, B6 for bid size, T1 for last trade time. You have to really stretch your imagination. But this one makes sense. X for what stock exchange does it normally trade on? So we could have brought back any of those pieces of information, and what that would mean is our comma separated values here would just get longer, right? And we would need more boxes on our screen. We only have 4. If you want to bring back more stuff, you just have to make more boxes and give them a name, and then put those values in those boxes, right? And so, this is kind of all provided by Yahoo Finance. As I mentioned here, Yahoo Finance kind of gives us this information for free. There's no charge. We can get it any time, and it's a great facility to have, especially if we want to do an application or a spreadsheet to encapsulate this information. And then I put a note on the bottom. So you get all this done, so what do you submit, right? Well, actually, you're going to submit one file, and that file, you notice it has a .live code. In spreadsheet terminology, we would have .xlsx, and if it was a Word file, it would be .docx. But this software creates files with an extension of .live code. So let me just go back to my development environment here, and it's like any other program. You do a file, you do a save as, right? You give it a name. I called this one Stock App for Business 241. Kind of a long name. You could call yours Stock App Project 6 or something like that. And you see it's automatically going to save it as a live code stack. So it's going to put the .live code at the end of the file name. You don't have to worry about filling that in. So if I saved it, let's say I want to save it on my desktop, so I'll be able to find it. So I would just go in here, I would go to users, I'd pick my name, and I'd click on desktop, and I would just save it on the desktop. So it's saved. So I can exit the program, I can go back to my desktop, and we we should see it there. So there it is there. It's called Stock App for Business 241. And because I saved it on the desktop, it's very easy to find. I would just ship that up to Moodle through the submission process that you're used to. And that's what you submit, that file. Now, the great thing about this and any other programming language is they allow you to compile the code. Because right now, the only way I can run this little stock app, let me just open it again. Yeah, the only way I can run this little stock app is within this live code environment, right? But what if I want to give it to somebody else and say, here, run this on your computer? Well, they'd have to download live code, right? And they'd have to know to go in to the run mode and press the button. But let's say I didn't want to put them through that pain. Well, you can save this as a standalone application. So under the File menu here, you see that saving it as a standalone application is one of the possibilities. So before you do that, you'll see that there's a menu selection above that to say Standalone Application Settings. And when you bring this up, you see all the possibilities. You could save this as a Mac, OS 10, or Windows, or Linux, or iOS, or Android. So if you want to save it as an Android application, you can. And for those that have Android phones, today's your day. You can save this app as an Android and run it on your phone. But for some reason they blocked the iOS. We have to pay $25 if we want to save it as an iOS and run it on an iPad or an iPhone. But Linux is free, Windows is free. Just click Windows, and Mac is free. So I could create a standalone Mac application here. And you can turn them all on if you want, and it will save them as all that you choose. For right now, I just have, I got Android turned off. I got Windows is the only one I have turned on. And it's going to be called Business 241 Stock App. And I could even specify where it's going to be saved as, where I'm going to save it as. So I'll just let it save in the default, and so I'll close that. Then I'll go back to File, Save Standalone Application. It says, do you want to save changes to the application before you do this? I say, yeah, sure, save it. Goes ahead and builds the standalone application. It was successfully built. Just tells me that it put it in the Applications folder under Live Code Community 7. And it's there. Okay. So I have it directed to go to my Dropbox folder, actually. So that's where it popped up. And I think I can find it in here. Business 241. I think I put it under Business 241 here somewhere. There it is, Stock App, Application. So there it is, running as a standalone application. And it's just called Stock App. So let me close down live code so that you can see that there's no live code program running in the background. And when I double click on this Stock App, it should come up running on its own, which it does. So I can click on the buttons, it will fill in the quotes. I can clear all the contents. I can click on it again. There's just a little delay there. There you go. Actually, I found that when I ran it on my Apple side of this machine, I didn't have to click more than once on the buttons. I just clicked and boom, it was there. I'm not sure. But yeah, so there, there's an app. All you'd have to do to share that app with your friend, you say, you're running Windows? Here's a file. How big is the file? It's 8,760,000 bytes. So it's not a big file. You can just pop that on the thumb drive, give it to your neighbor that's running Windows. Say, here, run this on your machine. It's a little stock app. It'll run standalone. Doesn't need anything. And that's how portable it is. So you could do the same thing. You could run it on your Apple OS 10. You can run it on Windows that I'm running here, and then there's other options as well. So that's Project 6. It only took me 3 weeks to think of that one. Yeah, I went through a couple other scenarios before I decided on that one. Actually, live code only came out free, I think it was sometime in 2013. So it hasn't been free for that long, but it's a great little small development tool that you could use. And there are others for sure. So we're going to look at this chapter 13, I believe it is. Yeah, chapter 13. And I'm going to pick off the slides that we need to pay most attention to. And the first one being the fact that the reason why we have to even cover this is because all kinds of system developments happen in organizations, and almost all of them, pretty well all of them, 100% of them, require some type of planned organizational change. And again, that change has to be managed. It doesn't happen. And when it does happen, the change is probably going to be risky, and it's probably going to require some type of investment. But that investment will return. Hopefully the return on that investment will be larger than the money you put out. And that's what we're showing here in kind of this rainbow graph that we see here, is that, the higher the risk, the higher the return. The lower the risk, the lower the return. And so if we are going to go into a risky development and organizational change scenario, what we should see back from that is a fairly high return. I mean, why would we do this if we're not going to realize a return, right? It's just a waste of time and money. So yeah, for all those reasons, that's why we would do it. And when we look at it from a business point of view, what are we doing? Well, we're redesigning business processes. We're taking something now that's done, a labor-intensive way, or maybe even a semi-automated way, and we're completely redesigning it and changing it. And your chapter has a very good example of this. And the example is this. This is an example of a person buying a book. So the customer then would go into the bookstore, would search the shelves, is the book available, either yes or no. If it is, they would purchase the book, they would take the book home. If it's not available, then the clerk searches, and the clerk might not find it. And if the clerk does find it, then the customer will purchase the book and take it home. But let's say the clerk doesn't find it. They will inquire about ordering, right? They'll look in their files and see if they can order the book. And if they're able to order it, yes, they will order it, right? They'll place an order. Customer will have to come back to the bookstore, return to the bookstore, purchase the book, and take the book home. If they can't order it, they'll tell the person to go to another store. That's not ideal, is it? But that is the scenario if you were walking into a store purchasing a book. And that is the business process that the clerk at the store would have to go through. But let's say we changed it, right? Let's say we did this. Let's say we implemented a way for the person to help themselves. Here you go, help yourself. Access our online bookstore. Search the online catalog. Is the book available? Yes. Enter the order and payment data. You don't even need the clerk, right? And then receive the book in the mail, and you're happy. But let's say the book wasn't available. Maybe you could select another online book, or another section of our bookstore, or what have you, and you would find what you're looking for, and you would buy that book, and it would be shipped to your home. That's a lot different, isn't it? That's a change. That's a big change, right? Leaving it all out there, leaving it all online for the customers to self-serve. But this is what many organizations have done. This is what our provincial and federal government have done. If you want to register your car, you can show up at the car registration office in Riverside Drive if you want, wait in a big lineup, or you can go online. And a lot of the government online services is what makes sense, right? And they want people to self-serve, because if you self-serve, then we being the organization, save the transaction costs. Not that long ago, probably have to go back 10 years, if you wanted to register for a course, you couldn't register online. You had to go to the Kelly building, down the basement, into the registration office, and pick your courses with a live person behind the counter. And 10 years ago, if your older siblings or your parents, they'll remember this, if they were a UPI student, the lineup used to stretch from the Kelly building all the way back to the sports center, all the way back to the Carey Center. That was the lineup of students trying to register for courses. True story. That is a business process that was, thank God, put online, right? And it became a redesign. And yeah, it didn't work the first day without some errors, but they made it work, right? And eventually, we couldn't think of doing it any other way. But that's an example of a business process that was redesigned. So how do systems come about? Like, they just don't appear. No, and it's good that they just don't appear. Like our little app here for project number 6, it's just going to appear, right? But the proper way of thinking about it and planning for it, it has to go through a series of steps. And what we should do in step number 1 is we should do an analysis. Like, why is this needed? Why should we spend money on this? Is it financially feasible to produce this application? And is it technically feasible? Do we have the know-how and the technology to do it? And if we do, and everybody thinks it's a good idea to spend money on it, then what we will do is we will design it. So there may be screen designs, there may be database designs, there may be some other types of design that's needed. And so we will go through this blueprint phase where we'll design this application. And after the design, we'll send it off for coding. And that's where the programming, the testing, the conversion, the production, the system will be put into use it over time. It'll need upgrades and maintenance, and it will have a useful life. Who knows how long the useful life will be? Maybe it'll be 2 years, maybe it'll be 10 years, who knows, right? And then what happens at the end of the useful life? Like any other asset, it needs to be replaced. And that's what will happen to our system. So this traditionally has been, what happens in system development. And you might think of it as a circle, a circle of life, if you want to call it that. It's certainly the circle of a system development life, because not every system is going to last forever, right? And why it's a circular flow is that it'll have to be reanalyzed, redesigned, reprogrammed, and then it will be a new system, and it will have a useful life. Not everything is going to last forever. So if we look closer at what systems analysis is, this is actually where you come in. This is where you do the most work, because you're the business person. You understand the business processes. You understand why they need to be redesigned. You understand that doing business with a clerk and searching the shelves for a book is inefficient, right? So you should open it up. You should have an online app, or at least in store, you should have an app like they do at Indigo. You can go to a terminal and you can search to see if that book's in the store. At least you know, right? So you're the business person. You're going to do the feasibility study to determine whether the solution is achievable given the organization's resources and constraints. You're not going to ask the systems people to do this. They don't know how much money you got. In fact, perhaps they should know, right? So so you'll do the feasibility study. And you will establish the information requirements. Who needs to know what information, where, when, and how? Right? Who's going to use this system, and do they need any security to access this information? And then after that analysis and planning is done, your work is not done. You're still going to be part of this phase as well. You're going to be part of the design. So you're going to work with the systems people and perhaps the end users of this new system to make sure it's designed the way it should be. Because you don't want any surprises, right? You're going to say, well, do you like this screen? Do you like where the buttons are? You might not like my Project 6. You might want to say, well, why are the buttons on top? Why didn't you put them down below? Why did you put the boxes in columns? Why didn't you put them going left to right? I could have done that, right? If the end user wants that, now's the time to say that. Because I could go back and change that, right? Like we've got no problem doing that. We can run that up the flagpole pretty quick and see if that'll fly. And in fact, you could do this right in front of the user. You could say, well, you don't like it the way it is now, but what if we took these boxes and move them, right? And head them down here, and maybe had the buttons going this way, right? So now the Google button's down here and the boxes are beside it. That's an option. We can have everything going from left to right. How do you like that, right? And maybe the clear button should be right up at the top. And we could do the same thing with the Microsoft and the Apple stock boxes as well. And you can see, while we're doing this right in front of the end user, they can say, yeah, I like that, right? That makes more sense. And you could finish this rearranging the boxes on the screen. And you would get live instant feedback right in the design meeting, right? You'd fire it up on the big screen. How do you like it now? And you get instant feedback. That would certainly cut down on the amount of headaches that you're going to run into when you go to the next step, which is the development step. And it goes programming. And all the code is done, and it works. We tested it. We know it works. And you put it on somebody's desktop and you install it, right? You come along with a thumb drive and you install it, or you get everybody to download it from the network. And then it lands on people's desktops and they said, I don't like it. Well, what do you mean you don't like it? Well, the buttons are in the wrong place. Well, why didn't you tell us this, right? You had your opportunity to tell us this back in the design. You didn't say anything. Did you see what the give and take, the back and forth that has to go on? Right? Because this is a custom application. This is not something you buy off the shelf at Staples. This is custom designed for the way you work. A lot of money and time went into it, right? So you can't come back now. Well, you could. It's going to cost you more money. But you shouldn't come back now and say you don't like it. You know, this is what you asked for. This is what you got. You know, and we tested it. We made sure it works with not only the unit, not only within its own program, but it interfaces maybe with other systems, and we got all that working, and you know, and we're in the final stages of acceptance, and you know, we're looking to close this project and have user acceptance and move on to something else. You know, so there is a lot of steps if you go through it properly. You know, it should be planned. You know, you should have that analysis up front. It should be well designed. It should be pleasing for everybody that's going to use it. And hopefully, you know, that is what goes into successful development efforts. So the you know, some of the other things that we could delve into, we could look at some of the structured methodologies that are out there, the methodologies that people know and use, and you know, even though they might not call it the structured methodologies, they might have some methodology that they use. They just don't go and open up a live code session and start banging away at the code, right? There has to be some plan or some blueprint that instructs them to design the way they do. And so much the same as we used entity relationship diagrams, there's even a higher level than that. Remember when we did databases, we did those entity relationship diagrams where we connected the tables together based on something they had in common? Well, this is the step above that. The step above that is how do you even know that you need a table called student? Well, you know that because the student table is going to have a bunch of processes around it. We're going to have to do things like verify availability. We're going to have to do things like enroll student. We're going to have to do things like confirm registration. And to do those processes, and that's what they are with the rounded corners in the boxes, those are processes that we need to do. And for us to do that, we need data. So you better store the data in a table and call it something like student. Because we need to do these processes as a business, and if we don't have the data, we can't do them. So, you know, this diagram is something like what we did in entity relationship diagram, but this one is called the data flow diagram. And then this one is even at a higher level. This one is all of the things that we need to think of, all of the processes that we need to do to, in this case, process payroll, right? Or print out payroll checks. These are all the things that we need to do, all the processes that need to happen for people to get paid. And so at the very top level, this is where we would start. We would start by drawing a plan. And so these are all the processes that we need. And so we'd say to the programming team, you know, don't forget to, you know, give us some way of inputting the data. and then to validate the inputs, and then to calculate the gross pay, to calculate the net pay, to update the files to, year to date files, that is. And then finally, oh, don't forget to print out the checks, or if it's electronic transfer, don't forget to send that to the respective employees' banks, right? So that all has to happen at this very high level. Even before we start talking about tables and all that stuff, right? What database it's going to reside in and things like that. This is way, way higher than that. So those are kind of the things that have to be thought of as we move through this land of system development. Getting back then to what we were kind of doing there with our project number 6, is we were almost in the land of object-oriented development. When we look at a button and the fact that you click a button, what you're actually doing is kicking off an event. But some people might say that button actually has methods. And by clicking the button, you're actually invoking a method. And that method requires some programming code. You could think of it as that as well. And so if we think along those lines where objects on the screen or objects in our code have methods, and those methods have to be coded, then that leads us into this way of thinking about systems development. And this is the kind of thing that programmers would think more of than end users or business people. And in their world, they would be thinking of object-oriented development. They would be thinking of the fact that you want an employee to have certain characteristics. And an employee can be classified as either a salary, an hourly, or temporary, but they all belong to a higher class. First and foremost, they're an employee. But you do want us to treat some employees different from others, do you? And these would be questions coming back from the systems development people. Let me get this straight. You have employees, but you have 3 classes of employees. And that just means that you pay them differently, in a different way. Some work for a set salary. Some work by the hour. And some work temporary. But they're all employees, right? Yes. So they're all part of this employee class. And that's important for the systems person to know. So maybe they would draw a diagram like this and put it in front of you and say, if we were to call everybody an employee, would you agree to this? Yeah, looks like what we do here. And that to them would then give them some type of class hierarchy to work with. And in their world, using object-oriented development methodologies, that would make sense to them. And that actually is plain English, and it should make sense to a business person as well. So you can see how through these diagramming tools, the 2 worlds should come together, and we should be able to have that discussion. Now there are alternatives. I'm not saying we've exhausted all the world of system development by any means. There are alternatives to the traditional life cycle. We could also talk about prototyping. We could also talk about end-user development. We could talk about let's not develop systems at all. Let's just buy software, right? Let's just buy packaged software. That's an alternative as well. Or let's just outsource it to someone who does this all the time. Let's not take it on ourselves. So these are all valid alternatives. And just to show you one of the alternatives, I think I have that on the page. I think I have, sample macro in Microsoft Excel. So this is why are you opening there? crappy. I'll have to go and find the file now and open it the old way. You want it to open up with the Apple side of my machine. So let's find the file and see what we can do to it. In the right folder, it'll be fine. There we go. So it's called sample macro button using Yahoo stocks, and still it wants me to open over there. My God, what do I have to do to say no? It's one of the great things about using parallel. Sometimes it's not too smart, is it? So now I'm going to have to say open with. Open with other programs. Wow. I saw everything else but Microsoft Excel. Let me know if you see it. Oh, there it is. Got it. Huh, there's going on behind the scenes here. Okay, here we are. Took us a while to get here, but we're here. Okay, so the way this little spreadsheet works is that it has a button. When I click on this button, it's going to refresh this table. You see this table of numbers and words. These are the prices and the high and the low for these stocks. This was actually going to be project number 6 until I gave my head a shake and said, why should we do this? So the idea was that you would put programming code behind this button, and every time you press this button, it would go out and get the stock information and populate the spreadsheet. So the refresh happens, and the new prices come back. So that's the way it could have worked, and that's not what we had. That's not what we ended up with, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But the magic to this button. No, yeah, I know why I don't have it opened up, because I don't have the development side here. Yeah. So the magic behind the button then is that it has programming code very similar to the code that we see in Project 6. So if we open up the instructions for Project 6, and I happen to have them here, they're already open. The programming code that we see in Excel behind that button is very much like this. Very much like that code that you're going to put into live code. Every time the button is pressed, it goes out to Yahoo Finance, it grabs a bunch of information about those stocks, and see it's doing more than just Apple, right? So it's Apple plus Google plus Microsoft plus General Electric plus. And it brings all that information back in a big long string like this, and then it starts carving it up. And it starts putting everything in the right, cells on the spreadsheet. So that was the alternative. That is what I was thinking about doing before I found this live code thing, and I said, well, we could do spreadsheet macros, or we could do this, which is more like real programming. So I decided to go with this instead. Yeah, so that that kind of falls into this area. What And what this area is end user development. So, if you were to write a program to help you, perform your everyday tasks, let's say, in some of the work you did in projects 1 through 5 already, that could be classed as end user development. It doesn't have to be programming. You don't have to write code. You could write like you have, right? Some very nice spreadsheets that would calculate what year a person's going to retire. Or if we go back to the solver, right? Solver did some work for us and told us what our maximum revenue could be, based on constraints. All of that can be considered end user development. So you don't necessarily have to have code all the time. We automatically think we have to have something customized. But the software is becoming so intuitive and I won't say easy to use, but friendly, that we can almost get to a point where we see many people able to do end user development. So the other alternative that we look at, if you don't want to write it yourself, you don't want to buy it, or maybe you can't buy it, you could outsource it, right? You could get someone else to write it for you and pay them to do the work. But what this involves giving up, right, some control. Anytime you outsource something, these are not your own employees, so you don't have full control over the situation. And so you are taking a little bit of an added risk by, first of all, giving out your business information and business processes to a third party, and it is giving up some control that you probably would want to think about. There's all kinds of security concerns around that as well. So the other alternative and the other methodology alternative is what they call rapid application development, which is basically a series of rounds of prototyping that leads to a finished product. And the reason why it's called rapid is because normally we think of systems analysis, system design, programming, and testing all as stop and start points. But what rapid application development does, it brings a team of subject matter experts together, those that know the business, those that know the IT, and perhaps some end users that are going to use the system. And it puts these people on a team for a period of time, and they actually leave their regular jobs, and it's certainly true for the business people. So if you normally do marketing work or you normally do HR work, then you would leave that job and go on a team and develop this piece of software over a period of months, we'll say. And the idea is that if we bring these right people together, we should be able to rapidly, or at least more quickly, develop an application. So we don't have to, decide on, okay, what day we're going to meet, what time are we going to meet. Maybe we'll have to wait, a week to get everybody together. All that's gone because everybody has nothing else to do but, I shouldn't say nothing else to do, but nothing else normally but work on this development effort. And you see that it's recommended that we use tools and techniques such as visual programming, iterative prototyping, using something like live code or a visual environment where you can drag buttons and move boxes and things can be changed very easily. And that will lead us to a more rapid development effort. And that's why we use live code, because it simulates what you would use in a rapid application development effort. So yeah, that's the chapter, and I kind of hit the high points as we went through, to kind of bring us back to you know, the fact that we're going to be doing this project, and it's going to require us to use this development environment to, you know, quickly develop an application that we can, you know, without too much knowledge of computer programming and all the things that it entails. In fact, we don't even have to compile it and run it as a standalone application. I just showed you how to do that in case you wanted to. But we can stay right in the development environment here, and all I have to do is click on a different arrow up here in the left-hand corner, and you know, when I click on the button, it either works or it doesn't work, right? So you know right away that, oh, I made a mistake, right? So, you know, maybe it's a problem with the code, right? Maybe you have to click on the button here and go back into the code. So maybe it's a problem with the code. Maybe I spelled something wrong, right? Or maybe I didn't call these boxes by the right names. So you see that these boxes have names, and when I click on the box and actually double click on the box, you see I had to actually go in there and call that box name ANS. I had to give it a name. It didn't come with that name. It just came with a generic name called field 1 or something like that. So I had to actually double click on it, and where I got that box was over here in the toolbar, right? It's a box that I dragged onto the screen, and that's what it looked like, and I kind of resized it a bit. And then I double clicked on it, and it was called field. So I, of course, couldn't use that, right? I had to give it a name ANS, or I could have called it symbol or stock symbol, you know, something more than just field, right? So when I run this program now, I thought it would put Apple in there twice, but it didn't. Just put it in once. Yeah, so that's how these boxes get onto the screen. And this one here, I had to give it a name, right? And so what I called it was bid. So I had to go in there and type in bid, ANS. So it would have a name. And it has to have a different name than the one beside it. The one beside it is called bid ANS2. I know it's not very creative, but here's the one beside it, right? It's called bid ANS2. So in my original design, I had, you know, this one up here, I had this one up here, and I had the, you know, the Microsoft button up here. I had the clear all down here. The clear all requires some programming as well, because what it has to do is actually quite a bit, right? When you click on the clear all button, what it does, it puts empty into field name ANS, name ANS2, name ANS3. The same, you know, it's redundant, but it does all of this when you click on it. What is empty? Nothing. So it just puts empty or puts nothing, and it blanks out what is already there. So it puts a blank into these boxes to make them empty. So it actually has some code. When I click on it, it has to do something, right? So, you know, you just move these boxes back, and you know, if you were to test it now, you'll see that it'll just clear out the boxes that have something in them. It actually did, you know, clear out the other ones, but we didn't see any difference because they didn't have anything in them anyway. It's only when they're all populated that we actually see the clear button, you know, doing some meaningful work. And if you want to get fancy, you can, right? like right now, this doesn't look all that pleasing because it's a dull gray. Problem with me is I'm colorblind. So to me, this looks perfect. The more contrast, the better, right? And my favorite color, by the way, is plaid. Yeah, plaid's a color. Yeah, I don't really have a favorite color because I can't really tell. So yeah, if you wanted to, I mean, you could dress this up. You know, you could go up here to this button and you could go into the properties of it. There's all kinds of things in here that you can do. Graphic effects, like you can pick a color. You could have an inner glow. You could have a color overlay. You know, you could choose whatever color you thought was good. I don't know. Maybe, you know, maybe an outer glow to it. Maybe an inner shadow. You know, they have all kinds of different colors that you can pick from there. And yeah, who knows, right? And you can, even the background, you can right click on the background. And this is, the background's called the card because you're kind of putting everything on this card. That's what it's called. That background window is called a card. And you can go in there and you can change the colors of that. Background, for example, you can have a color on the background. It looks like a nice color, whatever that is. Oh, look at that! Wow. See, just with a little bit of splash of color, right? It makes it look completely like Halloween. Yeah. Yeah, in Halloween, there you go. So, yeah. But it still works, right? No matter what color it is, it still works. So, there you go. Maybe we've gone too dark in that last button, I'm not sure. Right? Maybe you want a nice shade of pink. Yeah. So you can dress it up, you know, you can make it your own. You don't have to stick with the dull grays like I have. And yeah, and one thing about using this tool, you know, you might install it and never use it again. Or you might install it and you might say, well, I might have use for that later on. Because it is versatile, right? You can write the code once and you can save it and run it on many different types of devices. So your Android phone, your Mac, your Windows, Linux, whatever you happen to have. Yeah. So I did some I did some work with a group over the long weekend. I got a call from a former student of Business 241, and they were working on a marketing 341 project. And they called me, sent me an email, and they said, "Yeah, I'll go in Saturday evening and have a look at what you're doing." And what they're actually doing was they're working on an app. They had this idea for an app, and they asked me. They said, "Well, you know, if we were to do this for real, how much do you think it would cost?" It's a tough question. If you have no idea what something like that would cost, and what they were asking to do was develop this app to do this piece of work for them. I looked at it and I'd say, well, I would think it would take, you know, 3 programmers, probably 4 months to do what you're asking to do. So go with an average salary, 3 programmers, 4 months, working 40 hours a week. You know, the costs come up to somewhere around 80, 90,000 for salaries. Then on top of that, you need software, you need equipment, and you know, all in, you're probably looking at 120,000 to develop this app that you want to develop. And you know, that's my opinion. You know, knowing what I know and knowing what can be done in a certain amount of time, I would think that would cost you about 120,000. So that's what they wanted to know, right? Because they were doing this project for a marketing course, and it required some development. So, hopefully, by doing a project like that, you'll have some appreciation for, well, I did this little stock app one time when I took this Business 241 course, and it took me perhaps, 4 hours, and it worked. It wasn't all that, involved. I think if you were going to do this, it would probably take you a lot longer than 4 hours, and you can just extrapolate from there, right? Yeah. Okay, so we'll leave it at that for today, and we'll be back here next Tuesday.